So this presentation is going to be focusing on the Orchidaceae family, better known as just the simple flower called the orchid. As you can see here, it has a distinct coloration, distinct shape that we'll be delving into further in the continuing slides. The orchid is a family that includes 26,000 accepted species and 880 genera in all. An orchid is going to be classified as a monocot as well as being zygomorphic, right? Which means that they have bilateral symmetry, as you can see in these leaves. They're classified as monocots because the multiples of 3 that you can see here in the corolla, and they also have parallel venation, which we will go into a little further. And as I stated before, they do have zygomorphic symmetry. So this particular image is going to indicate the parallel venation that you're going to see in their leaves, which is a characteristic of monocots, and that's why they're characterized as monocots. As you can see here, the arrows indicate this parallel venation, as you can see in these leaves. And this slide is going to be an image of the most common orchid genera, known as Phalaenopsis, otherwise known as the moth orchid, which is their common name. In most orchids, there's adnation shown between the androecium and the gynoecium, the male and female parts of these flowers. These two whorls together are, there's adnation, they are fused to make a column, as you can see, very typical of the orchid family. And this slide is denoting the largest orchid genera, known as Bulbophyllum. There are 2,000 species in this genera, a very unique looking flower, and this is Bulbophyllum. This is an image of what they look like. This is an example of the Cattleya, which are sometimes called the old corsage orchids. They also have a very distinct shape and coloration in them. This slide depicts the Vanda orchid, which is known as the Singapore orchid, also very unique. You see, you have a lot of unique coloration and patterns in orchids, making them very distinct flowers. This image is going to depict, further why they are monocots. In monocots, you see multiples of 3. You can see in the corolla and the calyx, there's both these multiples of 3. The blue arrows, or the blue numbers, are indicating the calyx, and the black numbers are going to be indicating the corolla, both in multiples of 3. And if you think back, that denotes monocots. That is a characteristic of monocots. That's why they'll be classified as monocots. This last species that we're going to focus on is called the Vanilla planifolia. A little different looking, but it is very useful. Although orchids have little economic importance to first world countries, they are used in small rural communities around the world as forms of medicine, and they are also eaten and used in cooking. For instance, in the West Indies, the bulbs are boiled and drank, which is believed to cure poisoning from fish, interestingly enough. Also, in numerous cultures, they use portions of the orchid plants in cooking, and they're simply eaten as vegetables, like in Malaysia with the Enotochilus species. Interestingly enough. So that's going to be a little overview of the orchid family, the Orchidaceae family. Apologies if I'm not saying that right. And yeah, these are the people that contributed to the slide.